Elara clutched her 6-month-old son Liam to her chest, the last train ticket home crinkling in her sweaty palm. Her gaze darted to the departure board, a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach as she felt Liam's feverish skin against her cheek. This was their only way. The cacophony of the crowded departure lounge amplified Liam's sudden, wrenching coughs. Heads turned, eyes narrowed, and Elara felt the familiar burn of judgment. "Please, sweetheart," she whispered, bouncing him gently, tears pricking her own exhausted eyes. A passing station employee, glimpsing Liam's pale, damp face, merely gestured vaguely towards a distant first aid sign before disappearing into the throng. A disembodied voice crackled over the intercom, cutting through the din. "Attention, passengers! Due to severe and unexpected weather, all outbound train services are regretfully canceled until further notice." Elara's world tilted. The word "canceled" glowed red on the departure board. A cruel, final verdict. Liam whimpered, a small, pained sound, his little hand weakly gripping her shirt as his fever seemed to spike. Huddled in a deserted corner, the cold seeping into her bones, Elara frantically scrolled through her phone. Taxis, ride-shares, all either unavailable or demanding prices that would swallow weeks of groceries. Her bank balance mocked her, a pathetic string of numbers. Liam had finally drifted into a fitful, feverish sleep in her arms, his breathing shallow and quick. She had no options left. Silas Thorne sat in the dimly lit corner of the train station cafe, a half-finished espresso cooling before him, impeccably dressed in a dark, tailored suit that seemed out of place amidst the weary travelers. His gaze was fixed across the concourse. He watched Elara, huddled against the cold wall, her small son a pale, restless bundle in her arms. He'd seen that look before, a desperate exhaustion etched onto a young mother's face, a silent plea for a world that offered none. His expression, thoughtful and devoid of judgment, hardened with resolve. He hesitated for a moment, then, with a quiet sigh, rose from his seat, making a clear decision. Elara shivered, pulling Liam closer when a shadow fell over them. She looked up, startled, into kind blue eyes framed by perfectly styled dark hair. The man, in his expensive suit, was everything she wasn't. "Excuse me," he said, his voice a low, steady rumble, "but it looks like you're in a difficult situation. The last train is canceled, and the storm isn't letting up." Elara immediately bristled, pulling back. "We're fine," she mumbled, her tone sharper than she intended. "We don't need charity." He offered a small, gentle smile. "My car is going in your direction, out of the city. I noticed your ticket was for Meadowbrook. It's no trouble at all to drop you off. It's safer than waiting here." Elara's mind raced, suspicion warring with a flicker of desperate hope. "I appreciate the offer, but we'll manage," Elara insisted, her voice tight with forced pride. Just then, Liam let out a pained whimper, his small body convulsing with a cough that tore through her defenses. His cheeks were flushed, his breath shallow. He was getting worse. Elara's heart seized. Her pride screamed at her to refuse, to maintain her independence. But her son's suffering was a louder, more urgent demand. She looked at Liam's struggling face, then at the man, Silas, who waited patiently, his gaze steady and concerned. "Fine," she choked out, the word barely a whisper, a surrender to desperation. "Thank you." Stepping out of the biting wind and into Silas's car was like entering another world. The plush leather seats enveloped her, the climate control a warm, gentle embrace after hours of shivering. Rain lashed against the tinted windows, but inside the storm was a distant, muted rumble. Silas, with quiet efficiency, had settled Liam into a borrowed car seat, then offered Elara a soft cashmere blanket and a bottle of spring water. "He'll be warmer in here," he said softly, his movements unhurried. Elara watched him, overwhelmed by the sudden comfort, by the stark contrast between her world and his. Her eyes drifted to the glint of a platinum watch on his wrist, the subtle scent of expensive cologne. Who was this man, so calm, so generous, yet so quietly mysterious? The rhythmic hum of the engine, the steady whoosh of wipers clearing the torrential rain, and the blessed warmth of the car worked their magic. Liam, finally comfortable and free from the station's harsh stimuli, drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep, his breathing evening out. Elara felt a wave of exhaustion, so profound it nearly buckled her. Her head grew heavy, her eyelids impossibly weighted. Despite every instinct to remain vigilant, a sense of profound relief, a safety she hadn't felt in months, washed over her. Almost without conscious thought, her head found a resting place against Silas's shoulder. He didn't stir, didn't pull away, simply allowed her to find a moment of much-needed peace, the soft fabric of his suit, a surprising comfort. Silas remained still, feeling the gentle weight of Elara's head on his shoulder, the soft breathing of Liam in the back. He glanced in the rearview mirror, his eyes softening as he observed the peaceful mother and child. He'd seen that fierce independence before, that desperate struggle to keep up appearances while barely clinging on. It mirrored so much of his own mother's story. She deserves more than this. He made a mental note to help further, but cautiously, aware of her pride. He was Silas Thorne, CEO of Thorne Enterprises, a name synonymous with philanthropic endeavors. And this chance encounter was about to change both their lives in ways neither could yet imagine. A soft, unfamiliar glow filtered through the tinted windows, gently rousing Elara from the deepest sleep she'd had in weeks. For a disoriented moment, she wondered where she was, why she felt so warm, so safe. Then the reality crashed down. Her head was still resting on Silas's shoulder, Liam nestled peacefully in the back, and the car was parked, bathed in the pale light of dawn. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, bolting upright, her cheeks burning. "I can't believe I fell asleep on you." Silas merely offered a calm, reassuring smile. "You were exhausted. Both of you needed the rest." He turned, checking on Liam. "He only stirred once. His fever has broken." Elara reached back, touching Liam's forehead. It was cool. A wave of profound relief, mixed with mortifying embarrassment, washed over her. The sleek, dark car looked utterly out of place parked outside Elara's modest apartment building. Silas had insisted on driving her directly home, a gesture of continued kindness that left her feeling both grateful and increasingly uneasy. "Thank you, truly," Elara said, clutching Liam a little tighter as she reached for the door handle. "You saved us." Silas handed her a cream-colored business card, simple black lettering embossed on it. "Please, if you need anything at all, don't hesitate to call this number." His blue eyes were earnest, but his unwavering generosity felt heavy. She was used to earning every scrap of help she got, usually with strings attached. Accepting so much from a stranger felt like a dangerous precedent. "I'll be fine," she said, her voice firmer than she felt, forcing a polite smile. "But thank you." She hurried out, the card a small, unsettling weight in her hand, leaving Silas and his opulent car behind. Hours later, in a penthouse high above the Chicago skyline, Silas Thorne stood before floor-to-ceiling windows, sipping a freshly brewed coffee. The city sprawled beneath him, an intricate tapestry of glass and steel. His assistant, Marcus, a sharp, efficient man in his late 30s, entered the minimalist living space. "Morning, Mr. Thorne. Your schedule is clear until the board meeting at 2. Silas nodded, his gaze distant. "Marcus, I need you to initiate a preliminary assessment for a new community outreach initiative in the Meadowbrook district. Focus on identifying areas with high concentrations of single-parent households, access to quality childcare and affordable housing." Marcus raised an eyebrow, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "Meadowbrook, sir? That's a bit off our usual target demographic." Silas met his gaze, a subtle intensity in his own. "Sometimes, Marcus, the most deserving projects are found off the beaten path. Let's just say I've observed a particular need there." Marcus, ever perceptive, merely nodded. "Consider it done, Mr. Thorne." He knew his bosses' observations often held deeper, unspoken motives. The afternoon light struggled to penetrate the grime on Elara's apartment window. Liam, blessedly, was sleeping soundly in his crib, his breathing even. Elara sat at her worn kitchen table, the elegant business card from Silas lying beside her meager grocery list. Silas Thorne, Thorne Enterprises. She'd looked him up. A quick search had revealed a vast philanthropic organization, a name synonymous with wealth and influence. The sheer scale of his world made her feel even smaller, more insignificant. She picked up the card, her thumb tracing the raised lettering. "Call if you need anything." A part of her, the desperate, exhausted part, yearned to. But the other part, the fiercely independent part, screamed at her. She'd learned the hard way that help, especially from men like him, always came with an invisible price. She sighed, putting the card back down. Liam was better. She'd manage, as she always did. The shrill ring of her phone startled Elara from a fitful sleep that evening. It was her landlord. She let it go to voicemail. A few moments later, a stern, impatient voice filled her small apartment. "Elara, this is Mr. Henderson. Your rent is 3 weeks overdue. If I don't receive payment by the end of the week, I'll have no choice but to begin eviction proceedings." The message ended with a click, leaving Elara's heart hammering in her chest. She looked at Liam, sleeping innocently in his crib, his small face illuminated by the street lamp outside. The familiar weight of responsibility pressed down on her, heavier than ever. Her gaze fell to the business card on the table, gleaming faintly in the dim light. A dangerous, tempting option. A lifeline or a trap. It was past midnight when Elara finally reached for the card, her hand trembling slightly. Her finger hovered over the contact number. Then, with a deep breath, she pressed call. It rang only once before a calm, clear voice answered. "Thorne?" Elara's breath hitched. "Silas?" she managed, her voice barely a whisper. "It's Elara. From the train." There was a beat of silence, then, "Elara, I hoped you'd call. Is everything all right? Is Liam okay?" His voice was kind, gentle, exactly as she remembered. Liam's much better, thank you," she stammered, flustered. "It's just my landlord, and I don't have anywhere else to turn." She felt a profound shame, but the words tumbled out, albeit carefully edited. She wouldn't tell him everything, not yet. Silas listened patiently, then said, "I understand. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? There might be an opportunity I can offer you." The aroma of stale coffee and sugar hung heavy in the bustling little cafe near Elara's apartment. Silas, impeccably dressed as always, sat opposite her, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the chipped formica tabletop. "Given your situation and your obvious capabilities, I believe there's an opportunity for you," he began, his voice calm, almost clinical. "One of our community initiatives requires temporary administrative support. It would be a paid position, flexible enough for Liam's care." Elara's heart fluttered with a desperate, cautious hope. "Your community initiatives?" she asked, a sliver of suspicion sharpening her tone. "What exactly do you do?" He offered a small, practiced smile. "I oversee a number of ventures. Philanthropic work is a significant part of it. We aim to support families in need." He avoided her gaze, focusing on his coffee cup. Elara felt a chill, a growing unease beneath the relief. His kindness felt too perfect, his answers too vague. Elara started her new job the next day, Liam happily ensconced in the center's subsidized daycare program. The community center was bright, modern, and teeming with life. Children playing, mothers learning new skills, a palpable sense of hope. She saw other single mothers, their faces etched with familiar weariness, slowly finding their footing here. A pang of connection, a flicker of genuine gratitude warmed her. This place was truly helping people. She worked diligently, filing papers, answering phones, her mind half listening to the cheerful chatter around her. From his glass-walled office, Silas occasionally observed her, a satisfied yet distant look on his face. He seemed pleased, but Elara couldn't shake the feeling he was watching an investment, not a person. During her lunch break in the staff room, Elara munched on a sandwich, trying to ignore the chatter of 2 coworkers. "Thorne Enterprises is truly remarkable, isn't it?" one whispered. "Mr. Thorne pours billions into these programs, changing lives." The other nodded. "He's a visionary. Imagine being that wealthy, and still so grounded." Elara stiffened. Thorne Enterprises? The name resonated with the quiet buzz of luxury she'd felt in Silas's car, the expensive clothes, the guarded demeanor. Her curiosity, once a flicker, now burned with an insistent heat. She pretended to be absorbed in her lunch, but her mind was made up. She needed to know more. That evening, after Liam was finally asleep, Elara's fingers trembled as she typed Thorne Enterprises into her phone's search bar. The results flooded her screen. Articles, photos, headlines. Silas Thorne, billionaire CEO, philanthropist extraordinaire. Her breath hitched. There he was, in sleek, tailored suits, shaking hands with dignitaries, cutting ribbons at gleaming new facilities. One headline screamed, "Thorne Enterprises launches expansive single-parent support program." The words slammed into her. A sickening blow. "Nime single-parent support program." He wasn't just a kind stranger. He was him, Silas Thorne, a man whose entire charitable empire was built on helping people exactly like her. Every gentle word, every thoughtful gesture, every evasive answer replayed in her mind, now twisted into a calculated performance. A cold rage, sharp and bitter, began to bloom in Elara's chest. The train station. The canceled service. His perfectly timed offer of a ride. The way he had, noticed, her ticket. The job offer at his community initiative. His vague, diplomatic non-answers about his work. It all clicked into place, a horrifying, humiliating mosaic. He hadn't just helped her. He had targeted her. She was a case study, a success story for his PR, a vulnerable single mother plucked from the storm to be his new pet project. Her initial gratitude curdled into a burning shame. How stupid, how incredibly naive she had been to think someone like him would genuinely care about someone like her. She felt exposed, manipulated, and furious. He hadn't just offered a helping hand. He had offered a calculated kindness. The next morning, Elara Vance marched into Silas Thorne's private office at the community center, her eyes blazing with a fury that felt both righteous and terrifying. She didn't knock. Silas, seated at his sleek, minimalist desk, looked up, a soft smile beginning to form, but it died on his lips as he saw her face. Without a word, Elara slammed his cream-colored business card onto the polished surface. It spun once, then lay still, a stark symbol of her humiliation. "You're James Whitmore," she spat, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "No, wait! Silas Thorne, billionaire CEO of Thorne Enterprises." "And what am I, Mr. Thorne? Your new pet project? Your latest success story for the annual report?" Silas stood, his expression morphing from surprise to genuine shock, then a pained confusion. "Elara, what are you talking about? I don't understand." "Oh, you understand perfectly," she accused, taking a step closer, her hand trembling. "How convenient, wasn't it? The last train canceled, the sick baby, the desperate single mother. You just happened to be there, didn't you? Just happened to need to go. Out of the city, in my exact direction. And then, a job offer at your community initiative, where I'm sure I fit the demographic perfectly. Was this all some kind of setup? Were you just evaluating me like a charity case from the moment you saw me?" "No, Elara, that's not it at all," Silas insisted, his voice raw with disbelief. He ran a hand through his dark hair, looking genuinely distressed. "My interest was sincere. I saw you struggling, and I wanted to help. The job was a genuine opportunity, not a setup." "Genuine?" Elara scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her. "You let me pour my heart out, tell you about my struggles, my fears, all while knowing you could fix everything with a phone call. You let me believe you were just a kind stranger, when all along you were Silas Thorne, the man who runs programs for people like me." Her voice cracked on the last words. "You just wanted a new face for your PR, another sob story to parade around. I don't need your charity, Mr. Thorne. I don't need your pity. I've survived on my own, and I'll keep doing it." She turned abruptly, her back rigid. "I quit. I don't want anything from you. Keep your calculated kindness." Silas reached for her, a desperate plea forming on his lips. "Elara, please, just listen to me. It wasn't like that. I was trying to protect you from people like the ones who would only see my money. I wanted you to know Pime." But Elara was already at the door, her hand on the knob. "I'm not a charity case," she whispered, the words laced with a pain that cut him to the core. Then she was gone, leaving Silas alone in his opulent office. The silence echoing with her accusations, his own heart shattering into a million pieces. Back in her cramped apartment, the air felt stale and heavy. Elara moved with a dull, practiced efficiency. packing the few personal items she'd brought to the community center. The small, worn photo of her mother, a cheap pen, her favorite chipped coffee mug. These were the only things that truly belonged to her. Liam, sensing her distress, whimpered softly from his playpen, his worried eyes fixed on her. She picked him up, holding him tight, burying her face in his soft hair. "It's okay, baby," she murmured, though her voice was thick with unshed tears. Mommy made a mistake, a big one. Never again. We don't need anyone else. Just us." The bitter vindication she'd felt during the confrontation was now overshadowed by a profound, aching sadness. She'd been right to distrust him, hadn't she? He was just like all the others, offering help with strings attached, always wanting something in return. Her walls had gone up for a reason. They were there to protect her, to protect Liam. But now, she felt more isolated than ever before. Later that day, Silas sat in his office, the panoramic city view outside doing little to calm the storm raging within him. Marcus, his assistant, entered quietly, a cup of tea in his hand. He placed it on the desk without a word, then simply waited. She thinks I used her," Silas said, his voice hoarse, staring out at the blurred city lights, "that I targeted her for a PR stunt. I just wanted to help, Marcus. I just wanted her to be safe, for Liam to be well." Marcus nodded, his expression sympathetic. "I know you did, sir. I saw the way you looked at them." Silas turned, his blue eyes filled with a raw vulnerability Marcus rarely saw. "My mother, she was Elara. The exhaustion, the pride, the fear of being judged. She worked 3 jobs after my father left, just to keep us in that tiny apartment. I swore I'd never let another mother feel that alone, that hopeless." He clenched his jaw. "I didn't tell her who I was, because I wanted her to see *me. Not Thorne Enterprises, not the money, just Silas." He stood, a new determination hardening his features. "Find her, Marcus. Not for a program. Not for a charity. Find her for me. I need to make her understand." That evening, Elara sat on her worn sofa, Liam asleep in his crib, the apartment feeling particularly empty. She picked up her phone, her fingers hovering over Chloe's contact. Her sister was the only one she could talk to, the only one who might understand. "Hey," Elara said, her voice tight when Chloe finally answered, her sister's concerned face appearing on the video call. "You won't believe what happened." She launched into the story, recounting the entire encounter with Silas, painting him as the manipulative, wealthy man who preyed on vulnerable women. She omitted none of the details, emphasizing his evasiveness, his sudden appearance, the too-perfect job offer. Chloe listened patiently, her expression thoughtful, a subtle concern in her eyes that Elara couldn't quite place. "He just wanted a story, Chloe," Elara finished, her voice breaking. "Another charity case to polish his image." Chloe sighed. "I hear you, Elara. That sounds incredibly hurtful. Are you okay? Maybe I should come visit. I could catch a train tomorrow." The next morning, Chloe sat at her laptop, a half-eaten breakfast forgotten beside her. Elara's story, so raw and full of betrayal, had bothered her more than she let on. There was a desperation in Elara's voice that spoke not just of anger, but of a deeper, wounded pride. Chloe typed Thorne Enterprises into the search bar. The results flooded her screen. Articles about groundbreaking philanthropic initiatives, community centers, housing programs for single mothers, and glowing profiles of its CEO, Silas Thorne. She clicked through, her brow furrowed in concentration. One article, in particular, caught her eye, detailing the personal inspiration behind Thorne's focus on single parents, hinting at a past family tragedy. Chloe paused, a new, unsettling possibility forming in her mind. Elara might have been wrong. She picked up her phone. She needed to talk to Silas Thorne. Chloe Vance sat across from Silas Thorne in the quiet, upscale cafe, a half-empty latte untouched before her. Her gaze, usually warm, was sharp, analytical. "So, Mr. Thorne," she began, her voice calm but firm, "my sister, Elara, has told me quite a story. About a canceled train, a sick baby, a ride in a luxury car, and then a job offer at a charity run by a reclusive billionaire." It sounds a little too perfectly orchestrated, wouldn't you agree? Silas met her gaze, his own expression earnest. I understand why it would. And I'm grateful you called, Chloe. I want to explain everything, starting from the beginning. He paused, his hands clasped on the polished table, a hint of something raw beneath his controlled demeanor. My story isn't as different from Elara's as you might think. Silas took a deep breath, his eyes clouding with distant memories. My mother, Maria, raised me alone after my father left when I was 7. He just vanished. One day he was there, the next he wasn't. She worked herself to the bone, 2, sometimes 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, factory shifts during the day, just to keep a roof over our heads. I remember the shame she carried, the way people looked at her, at Grace, like we were less because she was a single mother. I remember her going without food so I could eat, pretending she wasn't hungry. Chloe watched him, her initial skepticism softening as she saw the genuine pain in his eyes, the deep-seated empathy that resonated with Elara's own struggles. This wasn't a rehearsed speech. This was a man reliving his past. When I finally found success, I knew I had to do something, Silas continued, his voice gaining a quiet passion. Thorne Enterprises, philanthropic arm, especially the single-parent support programs, isn't some PR stunt. It's a legacy for my mother, Maria. It's about ensuring no child has to wonder if they'll have a home. And no mother feels that crushing shame, that impossible choice between food and rent. He leaned forward, regret etched on his face. And the reason I didn't tell Elara who I was, I've learned that when people know my name, they either want something from me, or they become so intimidated they can't be themselves. I didn't want that. I wanted to help, yes, but I also wanted to have a normal conversation, to connect with someone who saw one soul, not my bank account. Chloe nodded slowly, processing. So, you were trying to protect yourself, and her, from that perception. Silas ran a hand through his hair, a vulnerability in his eyes that surprised Chloe. Exactly. But it became more than that. The moment Liam fell asleep in my arms, and Elara trusted me enough to lean on my shoulder, something shifted. I wasn't just looking at a case study, Chloe. I was looking at the strongest, most resilient woman I'd ever met, fiercely protective of her son, battling the world alone. I admire her, her courage, her love for Liam, and I'm falling in love with her. He looked at Chloe, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. Please, help me reach her. Help me make her understand. Chloe returned to her apartment, Silas's earnest confession replaying in her mind. His pain had been palpable, his love for Elara undeniable, but how could she convey all this to Elara, whose defensive walls were built so high? Her sister's pride, born from years of struggle and disappointment, would make her resistant to even the most sincere truth. Elara had been burned before, and trusting a wealthy man, especially one she'd accused of manipulation, would be a monumental leap. Chloe paced, phone in hand, knowing she couldn't just call. This needed to be face-to-face. Elara deserved to hear the full story, no matter how hard it was to deliver. The knock on the door startled Elara, who was stirring a meager pot of soup on her small stove. Liam, thankfully, was asleep in his crib. She peered through the peephole, her heart leaping into her throat when she saw Chloe. Her sister's face was serious, unsmiling, a stark contrast to her usual cheerful demeanor. Elara's stomach tightened. Had she called to lecture her about quitting the job? Or worse, to confirm her suspicions about Silas? She opened the door slowly. Chloe? What are you doing here? Elara asked, her voice tight with wariness. Chloe stepped inside, her gaze sweeping over the cramped apartment, then settling on Elara. We need to talk, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. About Silas Thorne. He came from nothing, Elara, just like us. Chloe's voice was calm, but the weight of her words settled heavily in the cramped apartment. She held up a printout. An article about Silas Thorne's early life. His mother, Maria Thorne, raised him alone after his father abandoned them when he was 7. She worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, factory shifts during the day, just to keep a roof over their heads. Elara stared at the photo of a younger, earnest Silas, standing beside a modest apartment building. Her anger, a fierce shield she'd clung to, began to crack. She remembered her own mother, the exhaustion etched on her face, the quiet dignity. The thought that Silas, the man she'd accused of manipulation, had known that same struggle, felt like a punch to the gut. His foundation, Thorne Enterprises, philanthropic arm, is named after his mother's maiden name, Chloe continued, her gaze soft. It's why he focuses on single mothers, Elara. Not for PR. For Maria. Elara's breath hitched. Her initial resistance crumbled, replaced by a dawning, sickening realization. Elara tried to find her voice, but it was caught in her throat. But he was so evasive. He didn't tell me any of this. Why? Chloe reached across the small table, covering Elara's trembling hand. Because he was afraid, Elara. Afraid you'd see him only as his money, not as a man. He's dealt with it his whole life. He told me he wanted you to know him first. Chloe paused, her eyes searching Elara's. And he told me something else, something much harder to say. Elara held her breath, a cold dread mixing with a flicker of desperate hope. He's not just trying to help you, Elara, Chloe whispered. He's falling in love with you. The words hit Elara with the force of a physical blow. Her hand flew to her mouth, tears blurring her vision. Love? The quiet kindness in his eyes, the way he'd held Liam, the unexpected comfort of his shoulder on the train. She'd dismissed it all as calculated, as part of his charity case agenda. Now it replayed in her mind, imbued with a new, devastating meaning. Her pride, her fear, her stubborn defensiveness had made her misinterpret everything. The humiliation was crushing, but underneath it, a profound ache of regret began to bloom. I was so stupid, Elara whispered, the words thick with shame. I threw it all away. Chloe squeezed her hand. No, you didn't. You were protecting yourself. You've been through so much, Elara. You've raised Liam alone. You've fought for every single thing you have. That's not stupid. That's brave. Elara looked down at Liam, who was now quietly playing with a toy on the floor, oblivious to the storm raging inside his mother. He deserved a stable home, a happy mother, and perhaps a loving father figure. He deserved for her to be brave enough to open her heart. Don't let past hurts steal your future, Elara, Chloe urged, her voice soft but firm. You deserve happiness. And so does Liam. If you can survive everything life has thrown at you, you can certainly take a chance on love. Elara finally looked up, a newfound resolve hardening her gaze. Hours later, long after Chloe had left, Elara sat alone in the quiet apartment, Liam finally asleep in his crib. Her phone lay open on the table, a blank message awaiting her words. Her fingers trembled as she typed, deleted and retyped. How did you apologize for such a monumental misunderstanding? How did you open yourself up again after building such impenetrable walls? Silas, she began, her heart pounding. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I let my fear and my pride blind me. I would really like to talk, if you're still willing. It felt inadequate, vulnerable, terrifying. But it was honest. She hovered her thumb over the send button, a profound sense of hope warring with the familiar sting of fear. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, Elara pressed send. A single tear escaped, tracing a path down her cheek, but this time it felt like a tear of release, not despair. Miles away, in his opulent penthouse, Silas Thorne stared blankly at his phone, the glowing screen a stark contrast to the dark city stretching out beyond his windows. He had almost given up hope. Then, a notification. His heart leaped into his throat. He saw Elara's name, her hesitant message. A wave of profound relief washed over him, followed by a surge of pure, unadulterated joy. He didn't hesitate. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Elara, yes, 1,000 times yes. When and where? He sent it, a wide, genuine smile spreading across his face for the first time in days. The future, which had seemed so bleak and lonely, suddenly shimmered with possibility. Elara arrived at the elegant park, Liam clutching her hand, his little face alight with curiosity. The late afternoon sun cast long, golden shadows, painting the autumn leaves in hues of amber and rust. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a nervous drumbeat of hope and fear. Silas was already there, standing beneath a towering oak, his dark suit a stark silhouette against the warm light. His gaze, steady and intense, met hers across the expanse of manicured lawn. He offered a small, tentative smile, a silent apology in his blue eyes. Elara felt a wave of tenderness wash over her, a quiet acknowledgement of the hurt they had both endured, and the fragile possibility of healing. As they drew closer, Liam, ever observant, let go of Elara's hand and toddled towards Silas, a happy gurgle escaping his lips. Silas knelt, his expensive jacket wrinkling, and scooped Liam into his arms with an ease that mirrored their first encounter. "Hey there, little man," he murmured, his voice soft, a genuine warmth radiating from him. Liam rested his head against Silas's shoulder, utterly content. Elara watched, a lump forming in her throat. Seeing her son so comfortable, so trusting with this man, melted the last of her defenses. This wasn't a calculated act. This was real, unvarnished connection. Silas, still holding Liam, looked up at Elara, his eyes earnest. "Elara, I'm so sorry. I should have been honest with you from the start. Not about who I am professionally, but about why I was truly drawn to you." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "I've seen what my mother went through, raising me alone. The sacrifices, the judgment, the way the world treats you when you're just trying to survive. I didn't want you to see me as another wealthy man trying to fix things with money, because I saw so much of her strength, her resilience, in you. I wanted you to see me as just Silas, someone who genuinely admired your courage." Tears welled in Elara's eyes, a mixture of relief and regret. "I understand," she whispered, her voice thick. "And I'm sorry, too. My pride, my fear of being hurt again, it blinded me. I've been so used to fighting alone, to expecting the worst, that I pushed away the one person who offered real kindness." She stepped closer, reaching out to touch his arm. "But the truth is, Silas, I was drawn to you from the moment you offered us that ride. I felt safe, seen for the first time in so long. I think I'm falling in love with you, and I want a future with you if you'll still have us." A radiant smile spread across Silas's face, his eyes shining. He gently shifted Liam to one arm and reached for Elara's hand, intertwining their fingers. "Elara Vance, there's nothing I want more than to build a life with you and Liam. I want to be a father to him, not because he needs one, but because I already love him as if he were my own." Elara squeezed his hand. "And I want to work alongside you, Silas, to help build the kind of world where no mother has to struggle alone like my mom, or like I did." He leaned in, and their lips met, a tender kiss sealing their shared future beneath the golden sunset. Weeks later, Elara's apartment, once a symbol of her desperate struggle, now hummed with warmth and stability. Fresh paint covered the walls, a comfortable rug adorned the floor, and Liam's laughter echoed through the rooms. Elara watched Silas as he expertly built a new toy train set with Liam, their heads bent in concentration. She smiled, a deep contentment settling in her heart. From the terrifying night at the train station to this peaceful evening, her life had transformed. This cozy home, filled with laughter and love, was more than just four walls. It was the embodiment of the family she had found finally. Months later, Elara, Silas, and a thriving Liam stood in a bright, bustling train station, a gentle breeze rustling through Elara's hair. They weren't seeking escape from a storm or a desperate ride home, but embarking on a leisurely family trip. Elara gazed at the departure board. The word, departing, now holding no fear, only the promise of adventure. She squeezed Silas's hand, a silent acknowledgement of their incredible journey. The last train home hadn't been a destination, but the unexpected beginning of a love story, proving that sometimes the greatest kindness leads you to the most beautiful future.